Good evening. Welcome back to the ABNF Podcast. I'm here with my buddy Nick. Nick, start of the summer. We got the NBA Finals on Thursday. How we feeling? How we doing?
I'm feeling good, man. And I think we must be the smartest two basketball talkers in the world, man. I mean, we started this podcast 2 seasons ago, and one team you brought up a lot was the Indiana Pacers, and the one team that I brought up a lot was Oklahoma City Thunder. And 2 years now, they're playing each other in the NBA Finals. So what does that tell you?
All
Yeah.
right, Nick. It's our special episode, man.
Yeah.
I can't wait to get into this because let's remember we aren't making any money off of this. We are giving these great takes for free. So before we start, guys, if you have not, please subscribe to the podcast. It helps us a lot. Please like, share, comment. Let us know what you think of the pod. Nick, I do agree with you. Two players we talked about a lot, SGA and Tyrese Halliburton. And the first episode we did back in August of 2022, we talked about both those players. And I
Yeah.
said at that time that Tyrese Halliburton should not have been traded from Sacramento Kings. I thought that that was a terrible trade. And it was all
Yep.
because I saw how pissed JJ Redick got in his own podcast about it. So I
Mhm.
felt like it's like, okay, let's see what this guy's about. And he's already been proven that he can lead a team to the NBA Finals, which I think even to like if we looked at this at the beginning of last season, people probably wouldn't have believed that. But that's the same thing with SGA, man. He's been 30 point per game scorer the last 3 years. I know that they had a bad matchup with the Mavs last year, which caused them to lose in the second round. But this year, man, besides Denver, they look unstoppable. So Nick,
Absolutely.
how are you feeling about that? Like I want to hear it because you've been one of the biggest believers in OKC, and like I said already, we've been talking about this these two players, these two teams for almost 3 years.
Yeah.
So I
No,
want
it's awesome, man, to see not only like young star guards be on a big stage like this, no super teams like SGA and then like Jalen Hunger, they're nice players, just like how Tyrese Halliburton has Pascal Siakam and a bunch of nice complementary pieces as well. And I just love that two small market franchises are playing in the finals. Now I get that a lot of people are like, oh, the ratings might not be. Who cares, man? Like, when was the last time we got an NBA Finals where you have the number one offense in basketball versus the number one defense in basketball? I honestly can't recall. So I think this matchup is going to be a lot better than what people assume is going to happen. That's just my personal take on it. So both teams have by far been the best two teams in the playoffs. Both teams had to go through pretty good opponents just to get to the finals. So like, especially Indiana, man. I mean, like no one thought they were. A lot of people thought they weren't even going to beat Cleveland. We were one of those people, and the majority of the public thought New York was going to win. Indiana keeps proving people wrong, man. So
100%,
yeah.
100%. And that was the thing too, we both on the last episode, if you guys have not checked it out, please do. It'll be in the link below.
Mhm.
We talked about how we thought Indiana was going to win this series in six.
Yeah.
I think I said 6 or 7. I know you said 6. You stayed on 6. Even once they lost that game 3,
Yep.
you were like, I still have Indiana winning in 6. Even when it went 3-2, you're like, I still have Indiana in 6. Pacers in 6. There was no changing that. And I just think that this was pretty wild to do on a shot after like I didn't even think that in game one. I did not think that shot was going in at first. When I
Yeah.
saw that bounce, I'm like, is he gonna really get the Kawhi bounce right now? Like that was insane.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, man, like the Western Conference Finals did not live up to what we were hoping it to be. And I think there's a lot that we're gonna dive into with this.
Mhm.
But right off the bat, bro, Ant, you need to play better, man. I'm not
Yeah.
even. There were 2 games where they really needed you, man. I
Mhm.
understand that you're the facilitator, you're the playmaker. It doesn't matter, man.
Mhm.
This is the highest level that you can be at. I know you've beaten up on some older stars and you've really like shown like who you are
Yep.
as a guy, but OKC exposed him and this Timberwolves team, I think in a way that I didn't even see based on what I had watched from the beginning of these playoffs.
Yeah, absolutely. And what's very interesting, even last year, like when Minnesota got to the conference finals, everybody was riding the Minnesota train, just like kind of like this year too, because they looked really good their first two rounds. But like just like you said, man, Anthony Edwards just flat out has to play better, especially the last two games. Like you cannot, as the best player on the team, you cannot go into a playoff game where you only take two shots in the first half of one of those games. I understand that Oklahoma has so many great defenders. And I understand that like they're gonna double you at any time you touch the ball and stuff like that. But man, you gotta get going, man. Especially like Graham, the real Julius Randle finally came out in this Western Conference Finals. He looked great in the first two series, man.
Mhm.
But after game one, like he was practically pretty much a no-show the rest of the series, to be honest with you. And Oklahoma, man, they just did a good job of not letting any role players get off. You know what I'm saying too. So
Oh
they
yeah.
literally shut everybody down. They made Anthony Edwards walk up the basketball 94 feet down the court. They made him defend. Anthony Edwards is a pretty underrated defender, but they made that man work every single possession on both sides of the ball. They wore him down. You know what I
Well,
mean? And
yeah.
Oklahoma's depth, like they have an amazing bench that I think a lot of NBA fans don't really understand like how good their bench is as well, just like Indiana's bench and stuff like that.
Mhm.
And when you play a team like Oklahoma, because they don't turn over the basketball at all. And when you turn over the ball like that, man, you don't got a chance of beating that team because they're too good defensively.
100%. So I agree with everything you just said about that. And I'm going to, I know what I said in the
Mhm.
last episode, but I said it's contingent off of if Julius Randle plays the way he did in the first two rounds. Clearly, after the first half of game one, that was not the case. The only other game he played really well was game three, where they blew them out by 40 points.
Yeah.
I mean, the motto of the series was just kill the other team. The first three games were just you knew which team was going to win right away. I mean, OKC waved the flag halfway through the third quarter in game three.
Yeah.
That's how bad they that's how bad the Wolves wanted that game,
Mhm.
is that they just smacked them.
Yeah.
And they had an opportunity to tie this series up 2-2. When your bench gives you 62 points and
Mhm.
you cannot shoot 5 of 13 from the field, you need to be aggressive.
Yeah.
You can't just take 13 shots in a pivotal game, because I think that that was the only chance that they were going to get a game six. There was no way they were going to go into OKC game five, where OKC knows, hey, we haven't been in the finals in 13 years.
Yeah.
We can win this in front of our home fans,
Yeah.
and we have the best defense in the league. We're going to
Mhm.
just blitz this guy, force Randall or anybody else to try and beat us. I
Yeah.
mean, I'm not going to see Dante give you 21 again. Nikhil Alexander Walker's not giving you 23 in game five. Jaden
Mhm.
McDaniels has been streaky. I've said this since the first round. You
Yeah.
either get Jaden McDaniels with 30 points or you get Jaden McDaniels with 5 points and six fouls. That's
Mhm.
just the way he plays because he's very aggressive, and you can't touch guys like Luka Doncic or SGA, or even, if Steph was playing, he probably could have gotten in foul trouble with Steph too. We don't know. We won't know. But I think that the biggest gaps with the Minnesota Timberwolves is just, like you said, we saw the real Julius Randle come out, a guy
Yeah.
who has not necessarily been a playoff performer in the way he needs to be. Another
Mhm.
thing too, man, is Rudy Gobert is just unplayable. I think that
Oh
when you
yeah.
play two teams that don't really have size
Mhm.
and can't put a body on him the same way, yeah, of course he's going to look great. I mean, I was about to say, Nick, if this series had gotten tied 2-2, are we going to see game five Rudy? Because in the first two rounds, game five was his best game by far.
Yeah. 100%.
And Isaiah Hardenstein, I think we talked about this before the season started. We said that the Thunder probably had one of the best off seasons. They got one of the best free agent centers. They needed size. Chet
Yeah.
Holmgren, brother, you are about a foot taller than me and you weigh 7 more pounds than I do. So, I mean, that's just crazy to say that, but another tall, lanky white guy. Um,
Mhm.
he definitely like has started to evolve more. I think we're starting to see the evolution of Chet Holmgren, but I don't think he's ever going to be a star level player in the sense of what they need. I think he's a great complementary piece. I think Jalen Williams took off finally. Do you agree with that?
I completely agree. I think this is the best round that both Jalen Williams and Chet Holmgren had. Chet Holmgren wasn't really scoring. They were both very, very efficient, both phenomenal, defensively and stuff. And like, dude, I just kind of want to go back to Anthony Edwards for a little bit. One thing he really needs to improve on in this game, he needs to learn how to post up. If he really wants to take that next level and really wants to be like that Dwayne Wade, that Kobe Bryant, that Michael Jordan level, what did all three of those players learn as after the first few years of the league? They start learning how to post up. Because
Right.
Anthony Edwards, man, he doesn't really shoot mid ranges either. He's either jacking up threes or he's trying to get all the way to the basket. Teams like Oklahoma, teams that are really good defensively, can key in on you when you're
Mhm.
dribbling up and down the floor and you're in the middle of the floor. They could game plan around that. It's going to be hard to game plan when you are able to finally have a post up game. You know what I'm saying? So
No,
like,
I know what you mean.
yeah. And then,
Yeah.
yeah, just going on Oklahoma too, like you were mentioning about Chet and Jalen Williams, like, dude, it's just like everybody played their best basketball in this series, like the bench and everything. It just seems like after the Nuggets series, man, they finally, just figured it out. You know what I mean? So they're playing their best brand of basketball like they did all regular season. And man, Oklahoma's gonna be tough to beat 4 out of 7, man. That especially the way that they've been playing, my God.
No, I know, man. And like, I'm just gonna like, Jalen Williams, I think needed to really, and this was something that I was gonna say, if somehow OKC had lost the series, right?
Yeah.
I would have said probably something along the lines of Jalen Williams might not be the number two that you need him to be. You
Mhm.
might need to get somebody else to pair along with SGA. Now, I think, like you said, that Denver series was big for them. They finally faced adversity and were able to overcome it
Yeah.
because a game seven against a team in Denver who has been there before, has won an NBA Finals championship.
Mhm.
Now, they don't have the depth like they did that year when they won, but I do think that the Aaron Gordon injury definitely played a factor in that game because
100%.
I think if Aaron Gordon's in that game, could it have been a close game in the second half? I think so. But I think Jalen Williams was finally able to emerge. Like I think the two games where he was huge was game four, where he had 34,
Yeah.
and then obviously game two where he had 26. And I mean, like if you just read the stat line, right? Like he had 19 in the first game, 13 in the game they lost, but he played only 25 minutes. And he scored 19 in game five, but they basically had that game by halftime. So
Yeah.
actually probably by the end of the first quarter they had that game. I mean, when I look at it, it's like he's not playing heavy minutes besides like two of the wins where it was a little bit closer. But every other game he was playing underneath 34 minutes.
Yeah.
I think that in order for OKC to like win the finals, for example,
Mhm.
SGA we know he's going to get his. We know
Yeah.
he's going to average somewhere between 32 to 36 points in the series. We already know that that's going to happen. They're going to throw Nemhard. They're going to go throw Neesmith.
Mhm.
You might have a switch onto Siakam at certain points. We'll see how Rick Carlisle decides to draw that up, but we know what they're going to do.
Yeah.
You know, Jalen Williams has to be that second guy for them again. In the biggest moment, I think that he can do it because he proved in this series he could do it.
Yeah.
Um, I'm curious to see who they'll have matched up on him because even though Indiana's not necessarily a elite defensive team, they're not bad. Like
Yeah. They got some guys for sure.
they got some perimeter guys that can guard. I know Halliburton's not the greatest defender in the world, so they're gonna probably choose somebody who's like a little bit less. Like he probably will guard somebody like Lou Dort.
Yeah.
Not to say like Lou Dort is like a bum,
Mhm.
but they're gonna probably choose the weakest guy for him to guard, so that's gonna probably be his matchup.
Yeah.
But I'm curious, man. Before we get to like Indiana and New York, I do want to say this as well. I do think looking back at this, we talked about that trade last year. We talked about it last episode. You know, it. I think the biggest thing for Minnesota is how do you, after 2 years of losing in 5 games to like two top five players, how do you, Anthony Edwards, keep and improve your game? They said last year you couldn't shoot the three, so you proved that you could shoot the three. You made the most in the league this year, right? What are you going to do next year? Are you going to learn how to, like you said, evolve his mid-range game, have a little bit of a post game where you can have that post fadeaway,
Yeah.
just like Kobe, just like MJ, right? Even we can say
Yeah.
LeBron. to an extent when he was a little bit younger. He used to use that way more. Um, do you find somebody to be like that alpha for with Ant? I don't know if you've seen the reports, but Kevin Durant has been a name that's been floated around. Do you bring in somebody like Kevin Durant to help guide Ant? Because I feel like Ant, and I'm not going to compare him to LeBron because it's not the same at all. But does he need somebody who's won before to help guide him into showing him what winning looks like at that level? Like, we know Ant's good enough to get you to the conference finals,
Yeah.
but is he good enough to get you to the finals? That's a question that I would want to know.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's just depending, just like you said, like who, like the teammates that are around him. I think Anthony Edwards could definitely be a best player on a championship team.
Hmm.
I think just getting to the conference finals back to back years, he's only 23 years old, so he's only going to continue to grow. He's only going to continue to get better and stuff. And just like you say, he has improved every single season and stuff like that. And he's a player that players would want to play with. It's just a matter of who that second fiddle is. And Julius Randle, it's just you can't have him as your second best player. And
No,
Grim, we say this every year too. You will never win a championship if Rudy Gobert is your starting center. It's just not going to happen. I don't care who the other four players are. I really don't care.
I know we've ripped on Rudy too many times. I'm gonna leave him
Too
alone
many
today.
times. Too many times. So honestly, I just think it just depends on who that second guy is. Obviously, he's got to be somebody better than Julius Randle.
Yeah.
Uh, but if you could get a Kevin Durant, why not? But I would just
What's that
very
going to cost you though?
yeah, what
You
is that
know,
going to cost and what the draft capital is? Because they gave up a crap ton just to bring Rudy Gobert in. So I don't know what their first round pick options are and stuff like that. I know they got a first round pick back when they traded Cat when they got
yeah,
DiVincenzo was included in that trade. But other than that, like Minnesota better not trade Jaden McDaniels. Like
they can't.
they
There's
can't.
two
Like
untouchable.
those are that's a player that every team would want if you're going
Right.
to get like an all-starish level player to play alongside Anthony Edwards. Everyone's going to ask for McDaniels.
And a good question too is how
Yeah,
much do you want to keep Nas Reed? Because
he's going to get
he's going to get paid,
yeah.
and with Minnesota right now, like you said, Jane McDaniel's untouchable. Obviously, Anthony Edwards untouchable. I would try to keep a guy like Dante DiVincenzo on the team. I don't think they can keep Nickeil Alexander-Walker. I do think he's going to go to another contender team because
He
somebody's
was
going to just
great, by the
throw.
way, in the conference finals.
Yeah, he's going to get the mid-level exception from another team. Minnesota's not going to be able to keep him. They have to figure out what they want to do to help keep building around Ant. I do like Terrence Shannon Jr. I think that, he basically can just come in for, I think because Mike Conley is going to retire sooner than later. I know he signed that extension, but
Mhm.
I do think that like you're going to start seeing Terrence Shannon Jr. more next year. I think that that's somebody. That's why I think that Nickeil Alexander-Walker probably walks because just they're not going to sign him. They need to focus on the guys they want to keep. And like you said, not here to bash Rudy Gobert.
Yeah.
He's just unplayable.
In
I
certain matchups,
Yeah, he is
yeah.
definitely unplayable in this matchup. And I think that again, when we look back at it, and obviously hindsight's 2020, the Lakers didn't have a center. They weren't even playing Jackson Hayes.
Yeah.
The Warriors, I mean, yeah, they had more size, but those guys just they're not because like I'll give respect to Rudy Gobert. Um, he's not awful.
Mhm.
Like he's better than the guys that Golden State had at
Yeah.
center,
Mhm.
but he's not elite. So that's the thing with him too is like he can rim defend.
Yeah.
He has no post game. He's not going to be able to score for you. If it's not an easy rim run, you're not getting anything. And OKC is going to let you try and figure that out because they're going to give you hell
Yeah.
every time on the perimeter.
Yeah.
Um, Nick, I just have to say this. We need ESPN to pay us millions of dollars, please. I'm so tired of all these guys that come on ESPN and just say crazy things, man.
Yeah.
Look, respect to the Morris brothers. They were good NBA players, but my guys, stick to your own lane when it comes to, yeah, there's no great teams left in the NBA playoffs. Like, Bro, what? OKC is like one of four teams that's won 80 plus games in a season. Do you want to know what the other teams were? The Bulls in the Jordan era,
Yep.
the 73-9 Warriors of
Yep.
2016,
Hmm.
and I am blanking on the last team. I don't have it in front of me, but they're an elite company.
Yeah. 100%.
Gr they're just a good team, Nick. Just remember that, bro. Good
Yeah.
team. Good team you've been talking about for 3 years. Just remember that.
I don't think there's nothing for me to add, to be honest with you. I mean, I've said a lot about Oklahoma for the last few years, and I'm just happy to see a small market team and a guy like SGA who honestly has been the best guard in the NBA for the last couple of seasons, and he's finally getting his recognition from that for not only because of winning MVP, but like he's clearly shown like
Mhm.
he's by far the best guard in the NBA
Okay.
right
I need
now.
to ask you this question now. It just came
Yeah,
into my head because I was listening about this earlier about like, oh, the best player like in OKC history. Okay.
yeah,
This is gonna be a two-part question.
yeah.
Who is the best player in Oklahoma City history?
Okay.
Second question. If one of those players, like let's say the top three players that have ever played for the Thunder, right?
Hmm.
We're gonna probably have the same ones, Westbrook, Durant, and SGA, right?
Yep.
Who would have the most impactful or like basically for the city? Like if they won a championship for the Thunder, whose is the most impactful? Because I'm curious to know like because before Kevin Durant left, like we thought he's not leaving OKC. He's gonna stay here forever. He's
Yep.
gonna try and win a championship. He's had chances. He even had one chance in the finals. So
Yeah.
if Kevin Durant could come back and you were able to, see him win, is that more impactful? Or I guess if we went back to 2015, 2016, when they had the opportunity to.
Wow, that's a great question. Um, but we do agree on the players, obviously.
Yeah,
Russ, KD, and Shea. Obviously, if they, I'm really confident that Oklahoma's going to win a championship. So once they win the
right.
NBA championship, he will be the greatest player in Oklahoma City history.
So you would say not yet though?
Oof. I mean, here's the thing, man. Russ, KD, they put in a lot of years in Oklahoma. They
Hmm.
both won MVPs as well, just like Shea has. Um, Shea's been on an incredible run this last few years, but like KD also won a bunch of scoring titles in Oklahoma. They made a lot of deep playoff runs too. I mean, you can make the argument for sure, but it would
Right.
definitely be definitive once Shea wins and wins the Finals MVP.
No, that's fair.
Yeah,
I would say that. I
you
think
definitely make a case for it right now. You definitely could.
yeah, no, I mean they went from a lottery team to him improving
Yeah,
to a 30 point per game scorer.
yeah.
They've been the number one seed the last 2 years in the West.
Mhm.
He has been one of the best to get to the free throw line. I mean, now I do think there are times where I think he's selling it a lot, but
Yeah,
there's a lot of players that do that. I just think that the way he does it is like you could turn on the game. That's the joke. You turn on the game and he's already at the free throw line shooting free throws. That's just been a joke though.
yeah,
But he's a gifted scorer, two-way player. The only reason I wanted to ask that question was because I think if OKC could have anybody to win a championship, and I think because of how tainted Kevin Durant became because he left to Golden State, I still think
yeah,
if he came back and won a championship, that's one of the most impactful championships you'd ever see. It would be similar to 2016 LeBron coming back to Cleveland, finally doing it, winning it. Like OKC's going to get this championship this year because I agree with you. I love Indy. I love Hallie. I'm wearing his All-Star shirt right now.
heck yeah.
But I just can't see them winning this series. And I think that that's why people think it's going to be a bad finals because they know who's going to win it. However, you it's I think people need to stop looking at okay, we know who the better team is. We need to look at the product that's on the floor, right? We want to see a competitive series.
And do you know what's interesting about this? Since you brought up like, oh, it might not be. A lot of people are assuming it's not going to be, I guess, competitive.
Yeah,
Remember 2011? No one gave Dallas Mavericks a shot to beat
right.
Miami. Who was Dallas Mavericks' head coach that
I was
year?
just about to ask the same question. Rick Carlisle, who is the coach of the Indiana Pacers?
Rick Carlisle. I'm telling you, man. I think Oklahoma's gonna win the championship, but I think it's gonna go. Me personally, I know
Hmm.
we'll we'll talk about it later, but I think it's going to be a lot better than what people anticipate. I think Indiana's going to be ready to go.
100%. Oh, 100%, bro. I mean, the biggest thing, and let's segue into the Pacers and Knicks conference finals. It
Yep.
was another series where Indiana was the underdog here. They have been doubted. I mean, I doubted them in the first round, bro. I doubted them. I thought that because Giannis was hurt last year, are they going to really be able to stop him and win this series? Well, yeah. I mean, they couldn't stop him, but they did stop anybody else that was around him.
Yep.
And in the Cavs series, we talked about this in the last round. The great thing about the Pacers is they are such a well-balanced team where, and Siakam even said this in one of the post games after one of their wins. This is a team that doesn't have defined roles. We all play with each other. We feed off of each other. We all want to win. We're
Yeah.
not saying that this person is better than this person. We just want to play team basketball, and that is the best way for us to play.
Hmm.
And that's been something that we've seen even last year. Like they just have so many guys that can score. I mean, if you look at their eight, right, you got Halliburton, you have Andrew Nemhard, Aaron Nesmith, Pascal Siakam, Miles Turner, Obi Toppin, TJ McConnell, Benedict Mathurin. And that's just eight. I mean, you could keep going. Ben Shepherd. You could even, I mean, Thomas Bryant had a big like 9 minute stretch
Yeah.
in game six. We didn't think that was going to happen, but this team can go 11 deep if they
Yeah.
want to. They played 11 guys in game six.
Yep.
So we have to give them credit. I mean, it's crazy to think that this team had a 28-1 odd to make the NBA Finals when
Yep.
the postseason started. And I think we both never would have thought this was the finals matchup. I know our finals matchup was a lot different, and I
Yeah.
think that that's what people would have wanted to see.
Yeah.
That's the thing. It's what the average fan wants to see versus what's actually good for basketball.
Yeah. I think this is great for basketball, Grim, because I think this era of stars pairing up, I think is going to be over now. Think about this, man. Look at Philadelphia. Paul George joins Tyrese Maxey, Joel Embiid. Look how that turned out. Obviously, there's a lot of teams. Look at Phoenix, Bradley Beal, Devin Booker, Kevin Durant. Look how that turned out. Look at
Yeah,
those teams that have three really, really obviously talented players, but then because of the cap situation, now you can't get good enough role players. And not only that, like there's only one basketball, so eventually one of them's gonna it's just not going to go well anymore, man. This is
no,
not like LeBron was in Miami. This isn't like when Boston had like that big four. This is not when like Kevin Durant, Russell Westbrook, James Harden were together.
right,
Oklahoma. Like I just think that era of basketball is over now, and I think a lot of teams are going to start constructing their roster based on how Oklahoma and Indiana has done it. They've done it the right way, man. They draft these guys. They build with them. They don't trade them. They don't trade their picks for like obviously Indiana made a move to get Pascal Siakam, of course, and I think the big
right.
reason that actually happened was because when Indiana won that midseason tournament and
Mhm.
they realized that Tyrese Halliburton is that guy, they needed to get a second guy. And Pascal Siakam, a lot of people actually criticized that trade. Like, how's Pascal Siakam going to work in this offense when he doesn't really shoot threes and Indiana likes to jack it up? It's worked perfectly.
He actually shot pretty well from three in the conference
Actually shot
finals
pretty well
too.
from three. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. So I just think the way that both of these teams are constructed, they're constructed very similarly.
Hmm.
And the one appealing thing about the finals match, I know we're talking about the Eastern Conference Finals is like how Oklahoma doesn't turn over the ball. In
Right.
the end, how fast that they play, you would assume that they turn over the ball a lot because they play up tempo. They're actually one of the lowest turnover teams in basketball.
You know what's crazy is the game that they lost, game five, was actually
Yeah,
their highest like turnover of
yeah,
the whole like postseason,
yeah,
which is crazy to think about that. And that was a game where they actually lost by a decent amount.
yeah,
So, yeah, no, like you said, Nick, they are a very careful team. I think also Tyrese Halliburton is one of the best point guards out there. Like when we talk about true point guards, right? We don't really see a lot of that anymore. When you see a guy starting a lineup at point guard, he's really more of a scoring guard. Like he can get you about 7, 8 assists a game. But Halliburton, like, no. He might not score 20 points in the game. He might have 13, right? But he had 15 assists in the game. He
Yeah.
is always going to look for the open guy, and I think why he works so well in this offense is because again, Rick Carlisle's got this run and gun offense like the Phoenix Suns, 7 minutes, 7 seconds or less,
Yeah.
where they're gonna push it up the floor. He's looking out for an open guy in the corner or cutting to the basket, easy bucket because transition buckets, especially for Indiana, which we saw in this series again, the Knicks just looked tired when they
Yeah.
started when they started to push the tempo more, and New York was trying to match that. They were
Yeah.
getting gassed. They weren't getting back on defense, so they might score, but literally Indiana's running down the court to get another bucket,
Yeah.
and that was again a huge factor in this series. And Nick, before I continue, I gotta ask you, how many top five players are we gonna actually see in the NBA Finals? Like, and I'm saying draft pick wise, like out of like all these guys. How many guys were top five lottery picks in the NBA draft?
I know Chet was one for Oklahoma. He was top.
He was the second pick in
He was the second
2022.
pick. So you got
Right.
Chet, Oklahoma. SGA was a lottery pick, but late in the lottery, right? You're talking top five picks.
I'm saying top five pick, like a guy like this supposed to be like this generational, like
Yeah.
changing
Uh,
player that, you know, we're
you
supposed to expect he's going to
Chet
take
the
over.
only one?
That is the only player.
Yeah.
Tyrese Halliburton was picked 12th overall.
Yep.
Andrew Nembhard 31st. Aaron Nesmith was a 14 overall pick. Like
Yep.
you said, SGA was was I believe he was the ninth pick,
Something like that.
something
And
like
he
that
got
because I know
traded.
he got traded from Charlotte.
Yep.
Charlotte just loves to give away great guards, Kobe Bryant all those years ago, SGA,
Wow, man.
man, but they can have Brandon Miller, bro, and LaMelo Ball whenever he chooses to want to play, when he's not hurt. So,
Yeah.
um, yeah, this like you got to give credit to both GMs, but because we're talking about Indiana and New York, I gotta, we gotta give Indiana a lot of credit for the team that they got. Like Aaron Nesmith was a trade with Boston, and I'm sure that when Boston was watching Game One, where Aaron Nesmith all of a sudden just becomes Klay Thompson Game Six, he hits five straight threes. I was
Yeah.
watching that game. I turned it on. When I got home from the gym, I'm watching this and I'm like, okay, maybe they make it close. And then I just see like Neesmith hit that like first three, and I'm like, all right, whatever. When he
Yeah.
hits the second one, I'm like, okay, it's kind of getting interesting. Like if he hits a third one, like this is gonna get serious. And when he hit that third one, I was like, oh shit, we got a game here. Like
Yeah.
that it got to that point. Can I ask you, if Tyrese Halliburton doesn't hit that shot, what do we say about that? Because he had Mikal Bridges beat on the
Yeah.
dr- on the dribble.
Yeah, I think it's just because he lost the handle of it a little bit.
Mhm.
He didn't get all the way to the rim. Now I was shocked he went all the way back to the 3 point line and chucked one up, even though he thought it was a three. We all thought like
Well, we
watching
all thought it was we all thought it was a three.
game them like that. Now obviously you look at the replay like his foot's on the line and stuff like that. He does the choke Reggie Miller thing, which is very iconic.
That was like just him doing that. I was like, oh crap.
Yeah, man. But I also want to give some credit to New York, man. I
Oh,
mean,
of
didn't really
course.
expect them to get to the conference final. I
Nobody
mean,
did.
like everyone thought they were just going to get bounced to the Celtics, obviously. But granted, obviously, Kristaps Porzingis' health just wasn't there at all. Um, Even though they were up 3-1, obviously Jason Tatum went down, but the Knicks were probably still going to win that game regardless. So I'm not going to really use that. So they beat Boston. They beat the defending champs. You got to give them respect for that. But I know at the same time that wasn't like them at full strength, obviously. But man, it happens in the playoffs, man. You're going to be playing teams. Not everyone's going to be at full strength, man. It just comes with the territory playing a long regular season and stuff like that. So,
100%.
and this is the first Eastern Conference Finals appearance they made in 25 years. But you know what's hilarious about that, Grim? When they made the Eastern Conference Finals in 2000, who did they lose to?
Indiana.
They lost to Indiana. Indiana went to the finals and lost to the Kobe Shaq Lakers, and they actually took them 6 games. It's very ironic that Indiana, this is their first finals appearance since then, too. It's
You
kind of
know
funny how
what?
this 25-year thing is really, it's funny how life works, man, sometimes,
No, it is, man. I think it was kind of poetic that the NBA and TNT last broadcast, Reggie Miller is there and
Yeah,
it's in Indiana. He
yeah,
gets to present the Eastern Conference Finals trophy to the Indiana Pacers before they sign off for the final time. I thought
yeah,
that was awesome.
yeah.
It really kind of like makes a good feeling to that because I know Reggie dedicated his whole career to Indiana and the city loves him. So that was really awesome to see that too. And it's
Yeah.
funny how this rivalry has, started again. Last year it started in the second round, and I think that this is very similar to the Golden State Houston rivalry that we had when they had
Yeah.
KD and the Rockets had James Harden and Chris Paul. And and there were a lot of people out there that were saying, "Oh, well, Chris Paul wasn't healthy, so they were up 3-2. They should have won that series." And last year, OG Anunoby goes down in game two. And then obviously no Julius Randle that whole series. He was out for the playoffs. And then
Yeah.
they lose Jalen Brunson with the broken hand. So that team was hobbled, and even Josh Hart was like gassed because he was playing like 45 minutes every
Yeah.
game. So
Mhm.
this year Indiana proved, healthy Indiana versus healthy New
They're
York.
a flat out better team.
Yeah, they were just the flat out better team. And
Yeah.
I think that, I give New York a lot of credit because I know that this team, like their starting five is one of the best in the NBA just because of their wing players that they have. Like you can't ask for better guys like Mikal Bridges and OG Anunoby to be your guys that are guarding on the perimeter. That's why they did so well against Boston. But Boston also chucks up 63s. So
Yeah.
you got to be fair there. Nick,
Percent.
before
Yeah.
we continue, we're going to take a quick break. We're going to continue to talk about this Eastern Conference Finals recap. We're going to also talk about the big firing that happened today with Coach Tibbs, and then we're gonna preview the finals. Welcome back to the second half of the episode, guys, and we're going to talk again more about the Eastern Conference Finals matchup. We're going to talk a little bit about Tibbs. Then we're going to talk about our predictions for the finals. I think you guys kind of already get a sentiment of what we think, but we're going to go in depth the key matchups that we think are going to be important to watch. And I think for the future of the game, like where this finals takes us. So, Nick, to get back to what we were saying, we were giving credit to New York, especially for a great season, another 50-win season for the Knicks and taking in a huge trade. Well, actually, not just one trade, two trades. I think the more surprising one, ironically, would still be Cat because it was just out of nowhere. Like Mikal Bridges, I think is in terms of how much they gave up was insane. But I think just because it happened a month before the season happened and they traded for Cat was more crazy because it was like nobody expected Cat to be shipped off. And I think that was the big one.
Yeah, especially like I remember we remember when that happened, of course, and like it's just like, well, Minnesota just went to the conference finals. Like they really just traded Cat. Like what? Then you realize it's for financial situations and stuff like that.
Right.
Um,
I mean, yeah,
but yeah, man.
somebody's got to pay that $60 million to him, so
Oh,
it ain't gonna
yeah,
be Minnesota, man.
yeah, 100%. And regarding like the Knicks and stuff like that, I know like the Tibbs firing's a big topic. Obviously, I think the majority of fan bases like are really really shocked by it. I that caught me off guard completely, to be honest with you. I was like, whoa, and especially like how quick it happened too. Like their season literally just ended,
I know.
like literally just ended, and that's the first thing you do is just fire the coach. Um, but man, it's just like with this Knicks roster, man, it's like there's not much else I believe that Tom Thibodeau could have really done. Yeah, he could have played his bench more during the regular season. So like when he decided to play right in champ, like they would have been much more prepared, you
I,
know.
I
Like it's
think that they gave up too much depth for all these
that's the
trades they
problem.
did.
Yep, 100%.
So I do think like I get it. At the end of the day, just like you said, the argument was, well, why didn't Tibbs play his bench more, right? But are you going to really play Cameron Payne, DeLon Wright, and Landry Shamet? Like, if you were like, if this was like, let's just throw those players on the Lakers, for example, we would say those guys are bums. They shouldn't even play to begin with, right?
100%.
Or
Yeah.
if they were on the Warriors, these guys are not good enough to play like right now. Like they shouldn't even be on the court. But because again, because of how many minutes that Tibbs plays as starters, right? We always criticize he never uses his bench, but realistically, I think he felt that he didn't have the guys on his bench to really be able to compete outside of Miles McBride
Yeah.
or not Miles McBride, Deuce McBride. And really like the only other guy was Mitchell Robinson that he was playing off the bench until all the foul trouble started happening in game three, which they should have lost. I mean, they were down by 14 in the third quarter, and he had to bring in those guys because Jalen Brunson was in foul trouble, Cat was in foul trouble. Like I just think that it's a big issue when people are saying, "Hey, he finally played his bench," but he didn't really want to play his bench. He had no choice to play his bench.
Yeah.
And I know that we started to see like Landry Shamet get more minutes after that game,
Yeah.
but it really didn't change the outcome of the series, obviously.
Yeah.
But I think New York needs to focus on what they want to do with Cat and also like how can you strengthen this team because you have so much money tied up now. Like when I
100%.
look at this team,
Yeah.
OG Anunoby got paid. Mikal Bridges is still on his rookie max extension, I think.
Yeah.
I think he's got like 2 more years. Jalen Brunson obviously tied up with a good amount of money. You have Cat's massive end of his contract coming up. And it's kind of like, what do you have left to play with? And you just fired the. So it's crazy.
Yeah.
But there's only three tenured coaches that have a longer tenure than Tibbs. Now, Billy Donovan is now the third longest tenured coach in the NBA.
Yeah.
And I don't even think he should be having a job right now, bro.
Should
So,
not. Oh my God. I would love to bring Tibbs back, man. Fire Donovan, bring Tibbs back.
oh,
I'm all for that.
please, please.
Wait.
I would love Tibbs back in
Yeah.
Chicago. Chicago would love you back. All right. Please come back. Because,
Yeah.
man, they haven't had a coach correctly since you left. So,
It's not. And one thing I want to get to, like, what's very interesting about this Tibbs firing, I'm just going to give you the records for the last 3 years, Grim. So 2023, they went 47 and 35. They
mhm.
lost in the semifinals, conference semifinals. Last year, 50 and 32, lost in the semis to Indiana. This year, they improved 51 and 31, and they get all the way to the Eastern Conference Finals. First time appearing in the conference finals in the last 25 years. Thibodeau in his 5 years with the Knicks, he made the playoffs 4 out of 5 seasons. This is their first back-to-back 50-win-plus season since 94-95 season, all right?
All
They
right.
won 10 games this postseason. This is the most since the 1999 Knicks team that made it to the finals and lost. Grim, do you know, since in the last 3 seasons, you know the Knicks have the third most playoff wins in the NBA
Did not
behind
know that. I did not know
behind
that, but I
Boston and
believe
Denver.
it.
They have 23 playoff wins. So my question to you is, now that they've fired Tom Thibodeau, who outside of Mike Malone is going to be the better option?
I wouldn't even be able to answer you that question because I'm not even sure who's out there. Who are they going to call? Darvin Ham? They're going to hands in the pocket, you know? Just that's more just a joke. I mean, there's not that many guys out there right now that are available that are notable or known coaches. I mean, the only guys I could think of would be like Mike Budenholzer. You have Frank Vogel out there. But those are both two defensive-minded coaches where it's kind of like they wanted to unlock this offense more. Tibbs has never been an offensive guy. Ironically, their defense actually was terrible this year, and Tibbs prides himself on his defense. So it's going to probably be an assistant coach on a team we probably have not heard of, or maybe we have heard of before. I was listening to Bill Simmons' podcast earlier, and they brought up I think it was Frank Jackson was the assistant coach on the Cavs, but he actually was an assistant coach for the Knicks for about 4 years under Tibbs.
Yeah.
So he knows the Knicks system pretty well. So it could be something like that. Because I mean, look, we just saw David Adelman get an extension to now be the head coach of the Denver Nuggets moving forward.
Yep.
And the same thing happened with the Grizzlies. But something I want to say though, Nick, is just kind of like I know this was a surprise firing, but given how this season was, I mean, are we really that shocked? Like, let's think about it. Mike Malone gets fired 4 games before this season ends. Luka
Yeah.
Doncic gets traded straight up out of nowhere in the middle of the night, and everybody loses their damn mind. And they fire the Grizzlies literally fire Taylor Jenkins after a very successful last 2.5 years. And they're
Yeah.
like, well, you're not getting it done. So we're going to move on. And it just kind of seems to me like the NBA just lost its mind this year and said, yeah, well, screw whatever we think is normal. Like we're just going to do whatever the hell is going to we think is going to happen. I mean, this has been one of the craziest NBA playoffs we've seen. I mean, if we said this in the beginning of the year, did we really believe it was going to be Indy and New York
No.
in the final in the conference finals? Did we really think it was going to be OKC versus Minnesota? I mean, maybe with that one, I mean, we did
Maybe
say like it was possible that they
the one's
could
more
get
likely
back.
for sure.
Yeah, like I think we might have talked about that. We'd have to go back and check the episode, but I do feel like we did talk a little bit about that one. Um, so I just think it's like we didn't expect a lot of these outcomes to be what they were. I think we just expected the old guard to be there and just represent, I think, for a lot of us fans who now are in our 20s and 30s, the NBA we grew up on, we still expected them to be there. So I think it's kind of like so much has been changing where, we just don't know how to react.
Yeah, I just think what's disappointing is like they clearly used him as the scapegoat here because
Oh,
I
oh,
think
100%.
Leon Rose's job should honestly be on the line. I understand he made some moves. The team's been getting better. Like the starting five is really good and all that. But like, what else was Tibbs was supposed to do? You traded 5 first-round picks, 4 unprotected to get Mikal Bridges. You just saw the Lakers get Luka Doncic for just AD and 1 first-round draft pick, pretty much. Like you see, teams are starting to get players not having to give up that much capital. You gave up all that capital for a player who's not even an all-star level player. Like Mikal Bridges is a nice player.
I'll give the Nets
He's a
credit.
really, really good player. He's a good
Oh,
player.
yeah, yeah, no, he's a good
Nowhere
player.
near that level of capital, kind of like how Minnesota traded all that for Rudy Gobert. That's how I personally see it. I'm not saying
No.
that Bridges is on the level of like Rudy Gobert. I think Mikal Bridges is a better basketball player, of course, but
Hmm.
like you gave up all that capital, you could have gotten a better player than that. That's just flat out how I'm viewing it. And not only that, obviously you traded Randall and DiVincenzo and a first round pick to bring in Karl Anthony Towns. You knew you were going to take on that salary. And not only that, yeah, the Knicks weren't really good defensively this year, but like it's kind of hard to be a good defensive team when your top 2 players are not good defensive players.
And that was one of the big
They
things
play
with,
80 minutes a piece a
yeah.
night with Karl Anthony Towns and Jalen Brunson. They're not really good defensive players,
And to
so
and to get back to that too, like just like how you said, that was also a key reason why they lost the conference finals. I, I understand people want to see the Knicks make the finals, but come on, guys, like what would they have done better than what Indiana can probably do that they can't? Because all they're gonna do is blitz Jalen Brunson. He's 6'1.5". The guy's gonna get blitzed every time because they know that he's the one guy that's gonna make that offense go. Now, he'll probably still get his, but Cat, you're gonna just attack Cat the whole time because clearly Cat has not been able to guard
get
other
them off the
guys very
floor.
well. Yeah. I think that
Honestly, Oklahoma would have
eh,
they would have swept the Knicks. The Knicks
they
wouldn't win the game.
no, they would not because here's the thing: Cat got into foul trouble against the Indiana team that, I mean, look, Miles Turner, he's a good center, but he's not great, and I still think like Cat made a lot of stupid decisions where it's just like, why did you foul right there? Like, there's because you literally had the advantage on the other end. Like Cat looked great in this series, and offensively, this was the Cat. It's like, where the hell has this been
Yeah.
all this time?
Mm,
Like he was great, and I think that they didn't expose that matchup enough.
yeah.
And I think it was partly because he was in foul trouble. The other part of it is still is because it's a Jalen Brunson centric team. And here's the other crazy part, Nick. Did you know that the net offensive rating for the New York Knicks was actually a positive when Jalen Brunson was on the bench?
I was going to bring that up actually to you. Notice
Yeah,
how a lot of their runs in this series against Indiana, who was off the floor?
Jalen Brunson.
Jalen Brunson was off the floor.
Yeah.
And I understand Jalen Brunson's phenomenal.
Hmm.
He's the clutchest player of the year. Like Jalen Brunson is a bona fide all-star. He's a
Yeah.
star level player and stuff like that. I just think we as an NBA like fan base as a whole, I think we overrated Brunson just a little bit. Because just like you said, this whole offense is based off of him. So of course, Jalen Brunson's numbers are going to look really, really, really good. But do you believe that he could be the best player on a championship team?
No.
What I see, I personally don't believe so. Some people might disagree, but it's kind of hard to win a championship when your
Hmm.
best player can't play a lick of defense.
Well, I mean, Becky Hammon actually pointed this out 2 years ago, and people were ready to like chop her head off for saying it that Jalen Brunson can't be the best player on the team when he's under 6'3".
Hmm.
It's just a fact now, man. Like, look, I think. there are a couple players that have been the best player on their team and have been on the shorter side, right? But Jalen Brunson, being who he is and the style of game that he plays, there's just too much there. I still think that there's there's too many holes. And
Yeah.
not necessarily in his game, just when he can't play defense.
Yeah.
And even though they have good wing defenders, right? You need a guy in that game, especially against a guard heavy team like Indiana, to be able to guard the other guys on the other end. Because when Deuce McBride was in the game, I want to say their net rating, like their offensive net rating was something like point, I think it was like +8. I think it was like +4 if Cat was the only one on the floor. So like it's crazy, but like Jalen Brunson was like the like main culprit. Like it was still positive if both of them were off the floor, but it was higher when it was like just Jalen like being on the like it's just crazy like to think about that like Jalen Brunson like being that. And I mean, like, if you look at his stats, Nick, right?
Yeah.
He did have 30, he averaged 30 in this series. His field goal was 50%, but he was averaging 21 shots a game. And I mean, the other thing too is like, I look at a lot of the minutes for these guys. It's like,
It was insane.
you got Cat at 35. I mean, his knee was cooked in the
Yeah.
last two games, and he was playing the most minutes in both of those games out of anybody on the Knicks. They even called out on the broadcast multiple times.
Yeah.
OG and Mikel are going to average around 37, 38, which what they did in the series. Josh Hart, ironically, only played 33 minutes in the series, like average,
Mhm.
right? And then you drop all the way down to 24.6 for Mitchell Robinson and 18.3 for Miles McBride. I don't want to why I keep saying Deuce McBride. Okay, so Miles McBride, I was right. Um,
Wow.
but either way, like when you have only those guys that are averaging your heavy minutes, right? And again, you don't have somebody else that can provide that offensive production the same way that Jalen Brunson has necessarily that's coming off of your bench. So I think that that kind of leads to problems. And I'll ask you this, Nick,
Yeah.
to get onto the Tibbs firing, and I asked you this question earlier, right? So, I mean, we've seen this for years, but if truly the number one reason was because he wasn't willing to play his bench, can we talk about all the other coaches, right, that only play about 6 to 7 guys in a series, and
Wow.
it's not like it hasn't happened? I mean, why weren't we questioning Steve Kerr for not playing Jonathan Kuminga more? I understand he is a very well-established coach. However, the question still comes is like, if you have a talented player like that, what was your reason for not wanting to play him? I get it, maybe he doesn't fit the system, right? But we saw Mike Malone last year. He wasn't playing a lot of guys off the bench. Not Rick. David Edelman was playing 7 guys because he did not believe in any of those other guys. JJ Redick played a whole half with 5 guys because he did not trust his bench,
Yep.
right? Do you really think that that is a valid reason to fire somebody because they're not willing to play guys that they don't believe give them the best opportunity to win?
I personally don't believe so. I could see that he could have played them a little bit more in the regular season, but when it comes to the playoffs, man, you got to have your best players on the floor, man. Especially when they're not in foul trouble and stuff like that. Like those games, every game counts in the
Right.
playoffs, and you want to have the best possible players on the court to win a game, to win a series, to get to a conference finals, to win a championship. Like it's nice to have a deep bench, man. And piggyback off what you're saying too, it's like we said it before the Indiana Pacers Knicks series happened. Indiana's depth was going to be too much for New York because New York had to play these long extended series. It's like Detroit, that was a hard fought series, man. They
And they
won.
could have lost that series too.
They could have easily lost this series. Those 2 games in Detroit when they were home, Detroit could have won both those games.
Right.
And then obviously Boston, they took them to 6. Um, Especially without Kristaps Porzingis, not being healthy and stuff like that. And then in this series, like Indiana had 11 players during the regular season that averaged 15 minutes or more. You know what I'm saying? Which
Yeah.
that is absolutely insane. like that.
You don't see it.
They're that deep. Like you
No.
do not see that. And just like I get it to an extent with the whole bench thing with Thibodeau, but that's just who he's always been, man. Even with the Bulls,
I was
like
gonna say we
never
know
he never
from
was deep.
experience.
Like yeah, I
Yeah.
understand too. Like he's had some really good teams and stuff, and I get that he's never made it to NBA Finals,
Mhm.
as a head coach and stuff. But like, I don't understand how he got fired. I mean, like the Knicks better have a great plan, man. Or maybe they have something going on behind the scenes. Maybe they do have something in place because there's rumors about Kevin Durant being available. Maybe he wants to go to New York. Maybe he wants to pick the coach. I don't know. You never know
Well,
what's behind the scenes, but
and that's what I want to piggyback off of too.
yeah, Thibodeau was just man. He's easily a top
Even
seven coach in basketball. You
yeah,
know what I mean? So like, you fire a guy like that, you better have a damn good plan. That's all I was. That's all I'm
I,
gonna say.
I don't disagree with you, man. But I think this is piggybacks off of your point earlier about Leon Rose and his job security, right? I think he made moves that made the team better in the
Yeah,
last 3 years. I think he's built a good foundation. I do think, yes, the overpay for Mikal Bridges, I think, was the big head scratcher because if you're gonna try and trade for Cat or not Cat, if you're gonna try to trade KD for Cat now, right? Like you you're telling me like you want to trade for him now, why didn't you use a lot of those assets, that draft capital, right? Because the thing about Brooklyn, and I'll give them a lot of credit for this, they have mounted a lot of good assets in terms of what they basically flipped Kevin Durant for. Like, if you think about it, they traded Kevin Durant for Mikal Bridges, Cam Johnson, some draft capital, right? And then they
yep,
go and flip Mikal Bridges for 5 first round picks and some role players.
yep,
And one of those role players, like again, like it might not they might not ever do anything for you necessarily, right? But the fact that they were able to accumulate all that,
yep,
and I think that's the question too, is like, okay, Mikal Bridges obviously showed like his value, right? The one of the iconic things I think that they did in the playoffs was Mikal Bridges blocking Jaylen Brown at the end of the game to seal the game. I think
yep,
that was when they came back in game two. So we see like, okay, it makes sense why you got him. However, if you had had an opportunity to get somebody like Kevin Durant, right, do you win the Eastern Conference Finals? Because I think this year, and it looks like Boston just again fell under that like unfortunate circumstance that I think we've seen about the last 5 to 6 champions deal with, right? Like we saw AD go down with a groin injury. We saw Chris Middleton tear his meniscus slash MCL.
yep,
Um, Obviously, for like Denver just lost depth. They just didn't look the same, unfortunately. And I mean, Golden State, I feel like was one of those like weird anomaly ones too. Kawhi left with Toronto, so they weren't the same team anymore, but they had a great foundation. And then Boston this year, Kristaps Porzingis with the mysterious illness that nobody has really been able to figure out what's going on with him.
yep.
Obviously, Jason Tatum tears his Achilles, and then, just age started to show for Al Horford because they don't have anybody else with size, and chucking 63 a game wasn't a great game plan for them. So they just kind of fell victim to something that has helped them all season long. And I just think for like New York, like I think that you can't fire. I don't think you should fire a coach for necessarily getting you to the best opportunity because come on, like realistically, did we think that New York was going to beat Boston? Like I mean, if you watch the first 2 games of that series alone, if you gave a random person who has never watched a lick of basketball, you only showed them the first half, the first 2 games, what do you think they would have told you? Hey, who do you think is going to win this series? Just watching these first 2 halves. Oh, the team that's obviously up 20 points is going to probably win. They look a lot better, right?
Yeah.
Like I get it's like New York was kind of almost like coming back in every game, and it was like these like miracles, or if you want to call it like just weird circumstances, like they just kept winning. I mean, there were some mm, there were questionable calls in the first round for in favor of New York, right?
100%.
So it's like, could they have lost in the first round? Possibly, because Detroit was one of those like scrappy young teams that had an opportunity to steal some games, and they weren't able to just because of some calls. Boston just came down with bad luck and just misfortune with not hitting shots.
Yep.
But they weren't able to get that against Indiana because just their style is just a lot different. They don't just chuck up 53s a game. They run out in transition and they're going to kill you with their pace.
Yep.
So,
Turn down
um,
good shots into great shots, man.
yeah,
That's Indiana way, man.
yeah.
Especially for a guy like Tyrese Halliburton, man. Like, man, I just hope he finally starts really getting the recognition that he deserves, man. Like, I get it that he's an all-star and all that stuff, but the fact that he was voted as most overrated, like that shit is just crazy to me.
I,
Like,
I think the 13 guys really had to say he was overrated is like clearly showing that they don't really pay attention to the game.
yeah,
And the fact that it was NBA players voting this is like maybe he shit talked them and they got upset about it. But either way, I mean, you have to give him credit for what he's doing. And I mean, credit to Pascal too. I was a little surprised that Halliburton didn't get these conference finals MVP. Now, I understand where you can argue for Siakam. Like, he was great, especially like in the pivotal games, like game four, game six, great, right? And he was probably one of their most important defenders when Neesmith went down with that ankle injury, and you kind of could tell he wasn't the same afterwards. You saw that Siakam was guarding 1 through 5. So he was one of their most pivotal defenders, especially like because Miles Turner just could not really stay in front of Cat. They were putting Siakam on Cat in certain opportunities. So I get it. But when a guy, averages first in every statistical category besides, I think it was points, which just again proves that this guy is literally pass first, does not care about scoring. He just cares about winning.
so
Okay, Nick, I gotta ask you, what would it, okay, is if they win the finals, which I don't think we think that's gonna happen, but if he did, you calling him a superstar then? Does he have to automatically be called a superstar, or do you still feel like he's just a star level player? Like I think he's a star level player. I don't know about superstar, but
yeah,
I think he's already at star. I think he's proven that he
100%.
can be
I
called
agree.
that.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think he's a star level player. If they win the championship this year, I mean, wow. If you really look at it, like look at who he had to go through. Like Giannis, I know Giannis didn't have much, but he still went through Giannis. You went through the number one seed Cavs. Everyone, oh, you don't have a shot. There's no way. They beat the number one overall seed in the East. They take them out 5. Now New York, no one believes they're going to win. They take out Jalen Brunson, and all those guys. If they take out this Oklahoma City team, and let's say Tyrese Halliburton is Finals MVP, and he's averaging 20 plus, 12 assists, 6 rebounds, shooting crazy percentage from three. I think you can have the debate. I don't think you could definitively just call him a superstar, but it could definitely be a conversation for sure. I think he
Is-
could definitely put himself like on the map of that for sure. But just
Okay.
like you said, I think right now he's just a star level-ish player. I just think he's just in a really really good situation with a phenomenal head coach with a lot of great players,
Mhm.
complementary pieces around him that like he doesn't need to be the leading scorer every night to be able for this team to win games.
Mhm.
Because there's a lot of like superstar level players like they have to be the alpha every night for them to win. Tyrese Halliburton, that's not his fault,
No.
obviously. That's just the way that they play and the way that this team is constructed and stuff like that. But I don't think, honestly, I don't even think Tyrese Halliburton really cares about that crap. To be honest with you,
I
like
don't think he
he
does
just goes
either.
out there and hoops. Like he doesn't care what people say about him, like or anything like that. It doesn't bother him, man. He just goes out there, enjoys the game of basketball, and just goes out there and just does his thing, man. Like, yeah, sure, people might say that, oh, he doesn't score enough consistently enough, and to be on that level of like, like the LeBron, the Steph, the
Mhm.
KD, the Anthony Edwards, like the Jokic, Giannis, Shea. I get that those players are better than Tyrese Halliburton, but at the same time, though, like Tyrese Halliburton is definitely a top 12, 15 player in the game.
Oh
So
yeah. Yeah.
just how I feel. Like
100%.
he's a skill level player, but if he wins Finals MVP and they somehow win this championship, Grim, nah, that's definitely a debate.
No, I mean it's definitely a debate, bro. I would also just say to like I think we have to start we have to start having that conversation about him being a top 15 player. if they're able to win this. I think you can argue him being in top 20, I think, at this point. I think like he's getting there. I just think
He's top 15 right now.
you think he's top 15? I
I
think
think,
like he's like on the bubble of 15. Because I think there's some players who are injury prone that we have to start kind of like pushing back now and saying like, okay, look, like you haven't been healthy, you're not taking your team anywhere.
yeah,
This guy has been healthy for the most part, but knock on wood because I don't want something bad happen to him.
yeah,
But he's been there. He has got his team to the East Conference Finals in his first playoff appearance last year, got to the NBA Finals in his second playoff appearance. I mean, you have to go with what the situation is, man. Like, we can talk about all these ifs, ands, and it's not gonna mean that it happened. We're living with what we know and what has happened so far. So,
100%. And Tyrese Halliburton's always been an underdog like his entire like basketball career, man. Like in
right.
high school, like I think he was a zero star. No one knew who he was. He
Hmm.
just somehow got to Iowa State. Then he was a really good college player. Then he should have been taken fourth overall by the Bulls. I know we don't want to talk about that, but like the
It's
fact
true.
that he fell that far into the draft
No,
and
it's
that
true.
Sacramento trading him, stuff like that. So like he just always has this underdog mentality in him that he just always has to prove people wrong. Like people are still not even giving him his respect, man. He just led this team to two straight Eastern Conference Finals appearances. Now they're in the NBA Finals. Especially for a small market franchise like Indiana. Like Graham, I don't get the hate around Tyrese, man. I don't get it at all. Doesn't make sense to me.
Well, I just think I think that some guys who are usually just viewed as because they're not the fastest, they're not the strongest, they might have a weird shot. They're just not the five-star recruit that you think they're going to be, right? Those sometimes end up being the best players, right? We can look at any sport, right?
Yeah.
Tom Brady was a sixth round pick. Did anybody expect him to be a seven-time Super Bowl champion? No, but this happens. It's all about the work that you put in, the dedication you put to your craft every single day. We've seen so many NBA players, man, that have been great that were not top five picks. I mean, we just talked about this earlier. The only guy that's going to be in the NBA Finals that was a lottery top five pick. Now, there were other players in the lottery, but I'm saying top five, right?
Yeah.
There's one. Chet Holmgren. That's it. Everybody else was a later lottery pick or a late first round, maybe a second round pick even, right? But we have seen that a lot with the NBA where it's not always necessarily the lottery guys that end up being the best players in the league.
Yeah.
We've started to see a lot more. It's the guys that actually have been taken later on.
Yep.
Look at the top five players in the NBA right now. I mean, none of those guys were the first overall pick. Think about that. Jokic is probably, at one, but I could say
Well,
SGA is at
Anthony
two,
Edwards, yeah,
you
unless if
know,
you think Anthony Edwards is a top five player in the
right?
game.
But I wouldn't put Ant at five right now because I just look at what he just did in the playoffs, right? Like if I were still gonna look at it right now, Jokic, SGA, Giannis, whoever you want to put after that, because I think it's kind of like it's up in the air, I think for four and five. You could put Ant in there, but if we even just look at the three top players, none of those guys were first overall picks. Giannis was the 13th overall pick. Jokic was a 40, what was it, 42nd
Got
overall
your
pick.
Taco Bell commercial.
Taco Bell commercial, SJ ninth overall, right? None
Yeah.
of those guys were the top number one pick. Anthony Edwards, if we want to say he's top five, would be the only one that we could say was the first overall pick. But then anybody after him, if you were going to put somebody like Luca or anybody else in that conversation, right? Even Luca was the third overall pick.
Yeah.
So, that's another thing. Um, Nick, let's talk about the finals real quick
Yeah.
before we end today. So, I think we kind of both have the same feeling of OKC's going to win this series. Real quick, like let's just get it through. Who you taking? How many games? What are the key matchups you're looking for? And is there any possibility for an upset?
I don't think there's a possibility for upset, but I think Indiana's going to win a game or two. So if I have to make a quick prediction, I'm going to go Oklahoma. I'm going to give Indiana 2 games. So I'm going to go Oklahoma in 6. I think that this is going to be a very very great matchup. The top offensive team versus the top defensive team.
Hmm.
I'm just interested in seeing how Indiana is going to defend Oklahoma. What is their strategy going to be? Is it going to just let Shea cook and shut everyone else down? Or are they going to try to game plan to try to slow down Shea and force the role players to step up like Jalen Williams and Chet Holmgren? Because they weren't really consistent in the play until the conference finals. They played their best basketball. So are we going to see zone? Did you see the Nuggets went zone against Oklahoma? Oklahoma struggled with that. So how is Indiana going to defend um, Oklahoma as a whole? That's the part that's going to be very, very interesting to me. And all for Oklahoma, who's Lou Dort going to start the game on? Is he going to be guarding Tyrese Halliburton 94 feet, or are they going to put him on Pascal Siakam? Because I feel like if they don't put him on Pascal Siakam, I think Pascal Siakam's going to have his way with this team. Even though Oklahoma is a very, very amazing defensive team, both teams have amazing players coming off their bench. Both teams don't turn over the basketball, so like both teams, they don't care who leads the team in scoring. They don't care about that stuff. Two phenomenal coaches. Rick Carlisle has been the underdog coach for the majority of his career, and he's been proving people wrong his entire career as a head coach. So I got to give Indiana 2 games. I got to give them the respect, man, because they deserve some respect, man. And the fact that they're still really not getting it as much now, just making it to the finals, it's as a fan of the game, it's just super super frustrating to see. But I got Oklahoma in 6.
All right. I like your analysis on that, bro. Think this is why ESPN needs to hire you. So ESPN, please call my boy Nick.
All
All
of us,
right,
man. Come on.
we need him on there. No, but I'm gonna go same with who I got. I'm gonna go OKC. I think it can go 6, but I think it's if OKC. I think it's if Indiana wins game one. I think that they have to sneak game one in to really get to 6
Yeah.
because I just don't see them winning game two in OKC. I think they'll win one of the ones in Indiana. Like that home crowd is just it's electric, and you saw it in
Both
the conference
crowds are
finals,
electric,
right?
man. Both of them are.
Oh yeah, 100%. And I don't think there's gonna be an upset. I mean, unless it somehow goes 7. But you know what? I mean, there's been crazy stuff happening, and I think that as much as I'd love to pick Indiana in this time, and I know I keep saying how I keep just, picking against them besides conference finals, last episode when I did think they were going to make the finals.
Yeah.
I just can't pick them because I think that the biggest issues with them is one, I am very curious to see how well Miles Turner plays after seeing a guy like Cat expose him for not being able to stay in front of him. Now, how is he going to play against Chet and Hardenstein? Are we going to see small ball played more? Are we going to see like a possibility where they're going to force like somebody like Hardenstein off the floor, where they're playing Chet at the 5 and Pascal Siakam is playing the 5 for Indiana? Like, are we going to see something like that?
Yeah.
That would be an interesting one to see because both these teams play at a really fast pace, and I'm really curious to see who's going to get exhausted first because they have like we've said this whole episode these both these teams are so damn deep. They can play 10 to 11 guys.
Yep.
The interesting thing that I want to see is will Halliburton have to be forced to be more of a scorer in this series, and how many turnovers is he going to end up being caused? Because I think a matchup that will be very interesting. I think they're going to play a lot of Alex Caruso in this series. I think he's going to play on Halliburton. I do think that. I think that we saw Mikal Bridges, who was the best perimeter defender on New York, really try to make him uncomfortable a lot. But one thing that I want to see if Rick Carlisle will do this is if they start trying to pick up SGA 94 feet. Because they started doing that with Brunson, especially with Nemhard, once Neesmith wasn't looking as good. I think Neesmith will start on SGA if his ankle is good. I know he's going to have about a week and a half of rest or not a week and a half, but like almost a week of rest
Yeah.
on that ankle. So I think he'll start on him. I'm curious to see if they'll switch to Nemhard. Siakam might get a couple looks at him. But I think that those are going to be big things to look at. And I'm just curious to see if Indiana stays to the identity that they have had this whole playoffs. Because that's
Yeah,
the thing too. Like with the finals, it's a way different environment. There's not a lot of guys on either team besides like Pascal and Caruso. I know that Thomas Bryant technically counts, but he didn't play any minutes for Denver. So like the two guys that really have experience is Caruso and Siakam. So I'm really curious to see how everybody else does. Nick, I think this is going to be one of the better finals that we've seen in the last 10 years. I hope that it ends up being 6 games and they're competitive. We'll see. So guys, thank you. If you have stayed tuned to the end of the episode, please remember to subscribe, like, comment, let us know what you think. Please share the podcast with whoever you think would enjoy listening to this before the finals. And for Nick, for myself, this has been All Ball, No Foul.